In this video, we're going to go over switch statements. Now, we're going to use the same program that we used 2 lessons ago while we're viewing logical operators and if statements to come up with this switch or come up with a use for this switch statement. Now, switch statements are a multiple alternative decision structure, and it allows you to test the value of a variable or an expression and then use that value to determine which statement or set of statements to execute. And it's basically, exactly what it seems like. The user puts in a variable, and if you're using Java 8, it can be either a character data type, byte data type, a short data type, or integer data type. Here in the example we're going to use is going to be a character data type, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to allow the user to come up with a type of down payment. Uh, how much of a down payment does the user actually want to put into his or her loan application? Now, if you remember from the 2 lessons ago, we created a program that uh, takes loan information, financial loan information, and then outputs whether or not you are qualified or you're not qualified, based on your debt to income ratio, as calculated by what the user inputs into the system. Well, we're going to make this a little bit a little bit have a little bit more fidelity by telling the user, giving the user an option, what type of how much of a down payment he or she is going to put down. And a good way to give that option, or at least one option to provide that functionality, is using a switch statement. So what we're going to do is we're going to give the user an option to say whether or not they're going to use a 5%, 10%, or 20% down option on the loan. So let's and we're going to create a new if statement, and that if statement, we're going to put that if statement right before where we calculate the debt to income ratio, and uh, we'll we'll say, where, enter the amount you will put down, and then maybe put, option A will be 5%, option B will be 10%, option C will be 20%. So the couple things that we need to actually um, actually do to change to actually create this switch statement. First, we need to create a new integer data type, and we'll put this up here. And this integer data type will hold our option, what type of option, which option the user will select. We'll call that integer data type option. I'm going to use an integer in this case, not A, B, or C, but 1, 2, or 3, because it's just easier for what we're trying to do, and yeah, don't want to get too into more advanced concepts than we have to. So here we'll put in this if statement. We'll say if the user wants to actually put down a down payment. So again, we're using this down payment option. So enter if true, yes or no for a down payment. So if down payment is true, then we're going to go ahead and say input. We're going to use the same input string variable. It's a variable purely to hold data. It's not actually, we don't need it to hold anything permanently. So we will show J option page, show input dialog, and for that input dialog, we'll put down. We'll say enter the amount you will put down, and go ahead and make a new line statement, and it will say, enter 1 for 5%. And new line will say enter 2 for 10%. And new line again, enter 3 for 20%. And something just to notice, I didn't really have to add the plus signs here when every time I hit enter on my keyboard to sort of separate this out. And so this is not just one long line right here, sort of separates it out. IntelliJ is smart enough to know that I meant to put a plus sign in between all of the string characters I'm putting in. So anyway, so once we get that input, we want that integer variable, that 1, 2, or 3, to be placed into the option variable, and we're going to parse it using the integer class method parse integer. And again, it parses that input string into integer and places it into option. And then we're actually use a switch statement. And so there are a couple parts to, or parts to the switch. I mean, I should have the reserved word switch, and that highlights in orange and IntelliJ, right? And then you have a test expression or a logical expression. So, or it's not a test expression necessarily like a logical or Boolean expression that will give a false or true, but it's more like an input argument. So in this case, where the input will be option. So option holds either 1, 2, or 3, and then we're going to test each of those options. Again, curly brackets. In each case, so we have case. In this case, case 1, or it could be a character, a character data type, an integer data type, or a byte or a short. I'm using an integer because it's easier for what we're trying to do here. But you can use A, B, or C. And if you do use A, B, and C, then you have to obviously put down A or what have you. You have to put quotation marks around it. But anyway, so we're using 1 here. So 1, then a colon, and then we put down the body of the statement that we want to be executed in the case area. So let's put down if we'll put down. We actually have to make another. Let's make this a double a double a double variable, and that double variable will be we'll call it down payment amount. And in down payment amount, we'll store the how much exactly the user wants to put down for down payment, and we'll type down payment amount is equal to the loan amount that we already have times, in this case, this is 5%, 0.05. And with that, we'll push out joption pane dot show message dialog null for the first argument, and then your down payment will be 5%, and we'll put in a dollar sign here to format that string, right? And then we'll put in down payment amount, and that should be it for what we actually wanted to display. So here we're going to say down payment amount is equal to the loan amount times 5%. So case 1 If the answer 1 is 5%, so what we're doing is taking the loan amount, multiplying it by 5%, and putting that loan amount variable, that down payment amount into the down payment amount variable, and then we're displaying it for the user and saying your down payment will be 5%, and pushing it out in dollars. So now that we have that down, we have two other cases to go, but we need to put something called a break statement. Now, what a break statement does is basically it stops the program from just type it out here as a reserve word, break, and all that does is stops the code from running at the end of the break, right? You can use break and continue statements in other manners, but it's not necessarily recommended because it makes it harder for the code um, to be to be actually debugged. And so we'll go ahead and do case two, and IntelliJ is smart enough to know to tab it over. And here we're just going to do the same thing. Here we can just copy and paste this same code and insert it here. But then what we want to do is change this to 20%, so 0.2, and say your down payment, or sorry, not 0.2, is 0.1, and we'll say your down payment will be 10%. And we can do the same for case 3. All right, case 3, and same thing, and your down payment will be 20%. Now that we've reached the end of our different cases, this is a bit of a way to um, sort of put a you know human proof it. If you can put a default section. Now, default section basically states if it's not case 1, case 2, case 3, then we can print out JOption pane dot show message dialog no. We would put down something like that is not 1, 2, or 3. And so in this, just look at it logically. If the user puts in enter the amount you will put down, so 1, 2, 3. Case 1, is 5%, multiplies the loan amount times 5%, or 0.05, and puts it into the down payment amount. Prints out what the down payment amount is, right? And the rest of our code's pretty much the same. No real change to any other pieces of the code. So let's go ahead and run this code. So let's go ahead and run it. And here it's asking what our monthly income is. Again, let's do $600, $500 again for monthly debt payments. How much do we wish to borrow? $8,000. So that will throw out an error if we don't put a down payment, but we do. So we'll put it down true. We do want to put a down payment down, and say we want to enter a 10% down payment. So 2. And your down payment will be $800. Congratulations, you qualify. And it exits code exits the program appropriately with exit code 0. But let's go back through that one more time. So let's put in again the same information, and we do want to put down a down payment. So, and we'll put down true or 2 for for that, notice that the format of this $800 is a bit off. It needs another zero. But you know, how do we force that format to be correct? And in the next section, we will talk about how do we format strings, and that's a very important when you're trying to display information in a way that the user can understand, and or other programs can understand if you're outputting to a file. So in the next section, we'll go over string formatting.